Hello everyone, I'm Booty, or you can call me Maddie, and welcome to this video. This is my first ever art process video with a voiceover, so any feedback and suggestions will be appreciated. I'm still trying to figure out how this works, so please be gentle with your criticism. For this video, I'll be explaining my work process, techniques, and helpful tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. Please know that these are techniques that work for me and may not work for everyone, or they require a bit of practice to get down. First off, the sketch. For more intricate poses like these, I generally do a super rough sketch first. If there's a background, sketch at least part of that before working on the characters. I know, backgrounds are boring, but trust me on this. I tend to construct the body from shapes and from memory, which is only possible because I've learned and practiced anatomy thoroughly throughout the years. This isn't a technique that I recommend to beginners. I'll make another video in the future explaining better sketch styles and ways to construct a body for those just starting out. After the rough sketch, it's time to start defining the actual shapes, expressions, body, and clothes. For these two characters, I started out with sketching Zoe, the girl, in a sitting position, and then drew Kreza, the big guy, leaning on her lap. I tried to tell a story through their body language, with Kreza looking exhausted and somewhat anxious, and Zoe being relaxed and supportive. A lot of story can be conveyed through body language alone, as well as composition and expressions. I'll likely do a video specifically on that subject later on too. That's already 2 more videos that I promised, and we're not even 2 minutes in. Something you may have noticed a few times is that I sometimes change things around as I work or resize things. In this stage of the process, you should feel free to mess around with pose, proportions, expressions, and anything else you may want to change. It'll get a lot more difficult to change these things later, so sketch time is experiment time. Also, if you use Procreate or Photoshop, definitely use its Liquify tool. It's amazing. I wish Clip Studio Paint had it. Another thing I want to touch on is stylization. A lot of new artists want to find their art style as soon as possible, but they often neglect to learn the basics. My tip to you, young or new artists, is to learn the basics first. The basics are things like proportions, anatomy, composition, color theory, light and shadow, perspective, and learning to draw expressions. There are a lot of tutorials and courses you can take online nowadays, so I highly recommend looking some up if you have free time. I learned the basics 3 times over because I went to 3 different art schools, so I can confidently say that learning these basics is one of the most important things for improving your art. Now, on to one of my favorite parts, line art. Now I know what you're thinking. Line art sucks. But hear me out. Again, I will likely end up making a video about line art in the future. I am making way too many promises today. Anyways, my first tip is to find a line art brush you enjoy using. I have the Clip Studio Paint Real G pen, which I absolutely adore, as it's slightly textured and has fantastic pen pressure sensitivity. Something any artist can benefit from is the stabilization feature, which smooths your line work. I generally have mine around 30, so it smooths out shaky hand shenanigans, but still gives you full control over the lines. You might also notice that compared to many other artists, I don't really redraw lines very often, if at all. Yeah, a little humble brag. Honestly, that's mostly just practice and having a steady hand, but the stabilization feature definitely helps. Also, and I will be talking about this in that line art video I mentioned before, have confidence in your lines. Newer artists tend to go over the same line multiple times and either delete it and redraw it a lot or are feathering them out by drawing the same line repeatedly. You can actually find very good videos on line confidence on YouTube or look for mine in the future. Finally, one last thing I tend to do in my line art is that I fill up tapered points and sharp edges and corners. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. A lot of artists tend to color in their art by hand because the bucket tool won't fill up the few pixels inside the tapered line art bits. If you fill in these few pixels in the line art stage, you can just use the bucket tool for easy coloring. An example in this drawing of where I use this technique a lot is with Grace's collar and chest area. I also use this technique with areas that are very small and may end up not getting colored out of my own forgetfulness or because I'm freaking stupid. Really, most of my tips and tricks are just about saving time and energy most of the time, which shows in how long an illustration usually takes for me. This one only took me like 2 hours to make. If you're still around, by the way, hi, hello, and thank you so much for sticking around. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd want me to talk about as well that I haven't addressed here yet, or I haven't already promised to make another video for. I really appreciate the support, and especially my Patreons, who I'll give a shout out at the end of the video. I love you all. Mwah, you're the best. Alright, back to regularly scheduled programming. After all of that, we are about to get to the coloring process. For these characters, I'm using the canon colors that I'm using in my comic for them as well. Hi, I make a weekly webcomic. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's called Falling Hard. Link in the description. These two are characters that appear in it, although they've only appeared in passing so far. These two characters have very different color schemes because their personalities and character designs are polar opposites. She's very small and bouncy and cheerful and very open with her emotions, while Kreza's calm and analytical and logical and not good with expressing himself. Also height difference, which is the best couple trope, don't at me. These two characters actually changed a lot from when they were first made to now. Zoe used to be fully Caucasian, very athletic with blue and green hair. I changed her to be mixed Aboriginal / French Canadian, and she has the most adorable freckles. Her hair is all blue, and she's actually kind of chubby now, which I highly prefer. Not as in for what I find attractive, but what fits her character better. Now, Kreza, on the other hand. He used to be an alien. Cringy fandom backstory. We all have them. He's changed a bit since then. He's no longer an alien, but he remains really, really tall, with pretty edgy colors. He has heterochromia because, I designed him when I was like 13. Since he's going to turn out to be a pretty tragic character, I wanted him to have more edgy colors. So next I want to talk a little about color theory. When you see the colors this whole piece is made up of currently, it's not really unified. The colors are all over the place. This is where layer effects can come in handy. For this, I wanted the mood to be summer evening sunset with the sun pouring in through the window with a warm glow. So for this, I had to figure out the best layer setting. Of course, I didn't want to darken it, so I went with an overlay first and then a regular normal layer over that. Other layer types that work well for light effects are add glow, just an add layer, or screen. Finally, it's time for shading. My shading style is in fact very simple. I generally only use 4 tools for my entire shading process. For the shadow layer, I generally use the multiply layer effect, and I tend to go for a more colorful, desaturated purple, pink, reddish, or orange color, as I find these to be the most natural and aesthetic looking. Blue can work too, but we'll give it a very cold, harsh effect. Any other color kind of makes it look sickly. For the coloring, I use a brush I downloaded called the Sai watercolor brush and a custom pencil brush. However, Clip Studio Paint actually comes with 2 brushes that have basically the same effect, called the transparent watercolor brush and the darker pencil brush. For blending, I use 2 custom brushes that I downloaded, with their incredibly professional custom names. Deedle D, which is a hard blender used for harder corners and to accurately blend smaller portions, as well as hair shading and lighting. And Doopy Doo, which is a very strong blur blender that I use for all my soft shading. You'll see me regularly switch between these tools because they work perfectly for me. I will have all of these tools in a Dropbox link in the description, so if you want to go and download them, go ahead. They are absolutely fantastic for use. Also, look how pretty that hair shading is. Wow. My dumbass is about to delete that on accident and not notice until like 10 minutes later. Oops. Anyway, how I start the shading process is by putting down the base color for the shading. Don't be afraid of going a little bit outside the lines, just erase any mistakes. Then using both of the blur tools, or sometimes even just that watercolor brush, I'll make them match the shape and texture of whatever I'm working on at that moment. Again, I'll likely make a video about how I create my shading style at a later date, but one thing at a time. The only way I can really tell you how to learn this is honestly to do studies. Look at a photo and see how the light and shadows interact with different surfaces, angles, textures, etc. For this particular drawing, the light is coming from the left and slightly above, so the shadows will be the strongest on the right. The shading style I used for this illustration is slightly more detailed than what I used for my comic, but a little less detailed than most of my non-comic related illustrations. Don't be afraid to experiment with coloring and shading styles. Go rough, get messy, or try to get as clean as possible. Use patterns. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemon— Wait, wrong rant. Anyways, experimentation is a great way to improve. Oh, that was such a bad joke. Okay, since I have no idea what else to talk about, I'll talk a little about my little VTuber persona thingy. You see, I used to work with a YouTuber for Doki Doki Literature Club mod videos where I would make sprites to create little visual novel stories. This sprite was actually a Doki Doki version of myself, but obviously way cuter than I actually am. However, that YouTuber kind of flaked on me suddenly, so I was stuck with an adorable character that was based off of me with multiple expressions that would just go to waste. So, with a bit of recoloring, I repurposed her to be my official VTuber persona. Yay! So, for highlights, I generally use a layer on the Add Glow setting on Clip Studio Paint. And I pick a color that's close to the light source's color. In this case, a bit of a yellowy orange. For this, I just use the same brushes that I use for everything else, obviously. Actually, one more tool that I neglected to mention before that I really use a lot is actually just the soft airbrush tool that's standard in Clip Studio Paint. It's very useful for soft edges. Alright, I'm just gonna let you watch this next portion with some music. See you in a bit. I'll be speeding up this last part because I don't want this video to get too long. final stretch. In the last phases of an illustration, it's the best time to add any filters or effects you may want. In this case, some dust and bokeh, or the blurry floaty orbs for a homely, calm feeling. I really hope you all enjoyed my video, and again, let me know if there's anything you would like me to talk about in the future, besides everything that I already promised to make a video on. If any YouTube viewers here would like to support me on Patreon, there will be a link in the description as well as my Instagram. I really, really want to thank my Patreon supporters, Marjolein, Saphonic, Lily, Dickie, Jow, Twill Distilled, and Benjamin. Your support means the world to me, and I hope I can give you a lot more good content in the future. Alright, for my YouTube viewers, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, whatever, you know the drill, you don't have to. See you next time. Maybe. I don't know. Bye.